depending on your location. Welcome to today's webinar, Provisioning Best Practices, brought to you by Dale Pollak, founder of vAuto. Just a housekeeping item for you. Everybody has been muted, so we will not hear any background noises. This means that you will need to type your questions into the question box that is on your menu dashboard on the side of your screen. If we'd like to get started now, Dale, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining. It looks like we've got a couple hundred people online, which I'm very privileged to see, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to spend the time together. Today's seminar is going to be on best practices of provisioning inventory. And I have to say that since we introduced the provisioning system last November, together we have all learned quite a bit about it in terms of how it works, how it needs to work, and exactly the type of benefits that a dealer is likely to derive should they use it and use it properly. And it's been pretty exciting. And I have to also let you know that as I prepared for this presentation, I started flipping through various different systems of vAuto systems of dealers whom I've recognized as being particularly effective at using the velocity method of management in the vAuto system. And I came across several, but one in particular that really put me on my heels. And this is a dealership who I'm going to share with you today. And what really struck me is just absolutely how they've taken this provision system and fundamentally and profoundly changed the way that they provision inventory. It is so different than any traditional way that we've ever have known to stock our lots, and I like to say that provisioning is the next generation of stocking vehicles. Provisioning suggests that we do it strategically. It suggests that we do it much more of a taking this to the hilt, and I think really represents, at least in my mind, best practice for the entire industry in terms of putting vehicles on that lot, finding vehicles, putting them out there for the right money. So what I'd like to do is to begin with a slide. I'm going to take you live here in just a few moments with this particular dealership's provisioning system. But I'd like to start with a slide that shows you from their vehicle summary page of their home page what I consider to be the essential vital signs for health and fitness of a used vehicle operation. Now, to be clear, the vital signs that I'm going to review with you, and there are going to be 4 of them here, are conditions that must be for success. But it should be noted that having the right underlying conditions or vital signs alone assure you of nothing in terms of a successful outcome, because in order to be successful in a used vehicle operation, you have to do a lot of things right. But I think it's also fair to say that even if you did a lot of things right, unless you had these proper underlying vital signs in place, you couldn't be certain of a sustainable, successful outcome. So what are these 4 vital signs for this particular dealership? Well, the first of the 4 vital signs is their price to market. And what you'll notice is that this particular dealership has their inventory age buckets set up such that in the first bucket, it's a 25-day bucket. Then I believe that they go in 15-day increments thereafter. And in the first 25-day age bucket, their price to market is 102% of market, which is generally a bit higher than I would advise dealers to be. But this particular dealership has earned the right to be priced a bit higher and still have a proper expectation to see customers. Why? Because you'll notice their market day supply, or put another way, the relationship of the supply and the demand of those vehicles in the first 25-day age bucket is very favorable. I believe Susan is at 59 days, is that correct?
57.
57 days. And generally I tell dealers that if they can assemble a bucket of vehicles with a market day supply of 60 days or less, they are particularly fortunate. And when you're able to do so, have vehicles of high demand and short supply, that earns you the right to be a bit more proud of them and still see traffic. So properly, they are pricing those vehicles at 102% for the first 25 days. And then the next 15-day bucket, they go down to basically market parity at 100%. And then they drop down after that to the third bucket, which they go down to 93%, which you can see really evidences a serious intention to move these vehicles. The second vital sign that I really am always looking for in a dealer's inventory is evidence that they own those vehicles fully reconditioned, ready to go for the right amount of money, and that's measured by the vAuto metric called cost to market. And the cost to market is defined as what they are in the vehicles fully reconditioned, ready to go, as a percentage of their average retail asking price. Now, generally speaking, I say to the industry today that you should own your vehicles fully reconditioned, ready to go for no more than 84% cost to market. And this particular dealership far exceeds that benchmark. Susan, their average cost to market, I believe, is what?
76%.
76%. So to those dealers who say, gee whiz, I can't find the right cars that I could buy for the right money, that need the appropriate amount of reconditioning and get them to the front line and get them there in the low to mid 80s, I show you evidence that in fact this can be done and is being done. But how it's being done is what we're going to talk about today. It's clearly being done with science much more than art. And that's the science of provisioning, which we're going to get into. But for now, the second vital sign, cost to market, is an extremely positive condition here at 76%. The next vital sign that I'm always looking for in a dealer's inventory as a sign of health and fitness is the proper relationship between the supply and the demand of their vehicle, otherwise known as the market day supply. And Susan, the average market day supply of this vehicle's inventory as of this morning is what?
54.
54. Once again, an extraordinary performance on the part of this dealership, finding cars in the market that they can buy for the right money that possess that very wonderful quality of high demand and short supply. And how is this done? Again, it's done today with the science of provisioning, as I'll show you in just a few moments. And the fourth vital sign is one of the most important, if not the single most important, and that is age discipline. This used car business of ours is a business of discipline, and to be sure, discipline number one is intolerance to age. And I tell dealers that as a benchmark at all times, no less than 50% of their inventory should be, no less than 50% of their inventory should be under 30 days of age. And I stress that's a minimum benchmark. So here what you can see as of this morning is that this dealership has 64% of their inventory under 25 days of age. So once again, you can see just extraordinary discipline on the part of this dealership to keep their inventory fresh and to do it in such a way where they have the most desirable vehicles in terms of supply and demand. They own them for the right money, and they're priced entirely rationally. And with this underlying foundation of proper conditions and doing a lot of other things right in this dealership, the result is quite phenomenal. So the next slide shows us the average age of their vehicles in inventory, I believe is 24 days, and that puts them at a 15.5 retail turns as of this morning. And you can be sure that with the right underlying conditions and the turn performance, as you see it here, this dealership's used car department is highly successful. So with this profile, we'll turn our attention to how they achieve this type of result. And as I've already mentioned, they do it using the science of provisioning. Now, as many of you who already know from your provisioning experience, or perhaps who have read or heard me speak in the past, the science of discipline begins with strategy. And the notion here is that a dealership has to make choices on their used vehicle lot. Why do they have to make choices, intelligent, rational choices? Because classical economics teaches us that there's no such thing as unlimited resources. There's no such thing for a car dealer as unlimited resource of money or space or effort. And consequently, if the objective of the dealership is to be in the used car business, take cash or capital, turn it into inventory for the purpose of achieving the highest possible return, it is incumbent upon that dealer to analyze their market and make rational choices as to the types of vehicles that gives that dealership at that particular moment in time the opportunity to make the highest possible return with the least risk. And in order to do that, the provisioning system presents the dealership with the strategy page as you see it here. But what I'd like to begin with is the observation that this dealership has really taken full advantage of the strategy page in the following manner. The first thing that they've done is they have changed the price buckets, these columns across the top. The provisioning system is delivered to provisioning dealers with default price buckets, and few dealerships actually think carefully about the profile of their dealership, the demographics of their market, and make appropriate adjustments to the price buckets. This particular dealership has done so, and as you can see here, their first price bucket is from $0 to $14,900. The second price bucket is $14,900 to $19,900, and then it goes up from there, $20,000 to $25,000 accordingly. So we can begin by taking note of the fact that they have modified the default settings of their price buckets. The second point to note is that this dealership has done something very important. Thinking about the profile of their dealership, and this happens to be a Honda dealership, considering the socio-demographic characteristics of their marketplace, they've made some choices. And what they have essentially said is that there are certain types of vehicles as of this month or this quarter that they are simply not going to stock from a strategic standpoint. It doesn't mean that they won't ever have one such vehicle in stock, but it will have gotten there, let's say, opportunistically rather than strategically, perhaps by a trade-in, and it's just a particularly nice vehicle that represents a good retail opportunity. That would be an example of a vehicle that would end up on the lot that is outside their strategic guidelines. That would be an opportunistic acquisition. But this dealership has said that there are just simply certain types of vehicles that, although they could sell, they have made intelligent, rational choices to say that it would be better for them to take their investment capital and put it in different type of vehicles that would achieve the likely results of a higher ROI with less risk. So what types of vehicles has this dealership decided not to stock from a strategic standpoint? Well, with cars, they have completely turned off or grayed out luxury sport cars. This particular Honda dealership to stock luxury vehicles over the price point of $25,000. In the area of sport utilities, they've said that they're not going to stock any intermediate sport utility in excess of a value of $14,900. They have shut off completely the category of large SUVs. Moving to trucks, they said thanks but no thanks to large trucks, to chassis cab vans, to chassis cabs and large vans. So once again, what you can see is that this dealership has been thoughtful about what they are going to stock, what price points they're going to stock them, and this is a decision that properly should be reviewed periodically, perhaps monthly, perhaps quarterly, because things in the marketplace and the environment certainly do change from time to time, which might suggest that the strategic guidelines set forth here might not be right at some point in the future. But until and otherwise reviewed, these are the types of vehicles that this dealership has decided to stock, or as the case may be, decided not to stock. Now, this dealership has also gone an important step further, a step further than many provisioning dealers have currently gone. And they've actually gone so far as to say that given these strategic guidelines, there are actually some specific year, make, model cars that for whatever reason, based on their judgment, their experience, their analysis, they simply are not going to stock specific year, make, model vehicles. So for those of you who are familiar with the provisioning system, you may or should be aware of the fact that you can actually suppress certain vehicles based on their year, make, or model. So if we look at this particular dealership's suppression of vehicles, you're going to see that there are really quite a lot of vehicles that they, once again, have said for one reason or another within those strategic guidelines, thanks but no thanks. Thanks but no thanks based on certain year, make, model configurations. They just simply say, even if these vehicles fit the strategic guidelines based on analysis or past experience or reason or judgment, they just simply don't want any of these thanks but no thanks. So once again, let's take a step or two back and think about before they even have begun to use the provisioning system in earnest, what they've really done is they've done their homework. They've thought about their market, what they want to stock, what they don't want to stock. And the next step of their strategic analysis is really quite impressive and one that many provision dealers have not yet taken, but I would recommend that they do so, and that is that they have taken advantage of a new enhancement to the provision system that we call the Advanced Workbench. And I want to take just a few moments and introduce the Advanced Workbench to everyone because many of you have not yet seen this aspect of the system, and it's really quite extraordinary. What the Advanced Workbench does, essentially, is allow a dealership to genetically engineer characteristics of the vehicles that they choose to stock. And what do I mean by genetically engineering the characteristics? Well, as you can see here from the Advanced Workbench page, and what you know from your past provisioning experience is that the overall letter grade that is assigned to a vehicle is actually comprised of 7 subcomponents, 7 discrete characteristics of a vehicle. The first one being its demand, the second interest, the third is its volume, its market day supply, its profitability, its availability, and the dealership's recent past experience. These are the 7 discrete attributes. And what the Advanced Workbench allows the dealership to do is to specify a minimum grade upon which the vehicle must meet or exceed in order to even make it to the recommendation list. So the minimum grade standard that this particular dealership has chosen for its test or minimum criteria for stocking is as follows. For demand, volume, and dealership's recent past experience, they've said that they don't want to see any car as a recommendation that doesn't have a minimum grade on these 3 characteristics of at least the C+. For the remaining 4 attributes, the interest, the market day supply, the profitability, and the availability, this particular dealership said that they would accept a minimum grade of a C or better. So what they have done here is that they have set out criteria by which they say unless a vehicle meets these minimum standards in each of these 7 discrete areas or attributes or characteristics of the vehicle, thanks but no thanks. So what they have done here in totality in their strategy is they have given maximum, thoughtful, careful attention to saying exactly what it is that they do want to do with their investment capital with respect to their inventory and what it is that they don't want to do. Now, with those parameters set, the system then takes over for the dealership and actually makes specific recommendations. So if we go back to our strategy page here, what we can see, taking an example of compact SUVs, in the 14,900 to 19,900 category, it tells the dealership that as of this morning, they need 6 vehicles in that category. in the 19,900, Susan, correct me if I've got this right, to 25,000 compact SUVs, they need 7 vehicles.
Correct.
So as many of you already know, what the provision system does is it keeps track of what you have in stock in each one of these strategic segments, and it also knows what your past 45-day sales history is in each segment, and it makes recommendations as to what you need to buy or sell in order to balance your current inventory to your stated objectives. And in this case, I believe it's a 45-day supply. So once again, in the 14,900 and 19,900 category of compact SUVs, they need 6, and in the next category, they need 7. So that raises the question, what would be the very best ones, the most optimal ones that they could possibly have on their lot to ensure success? Well, if we click over to the provision recommendation page, for the first category, the 14.9 to 19.9 compact SUVs, what we see here are unquestionably what would be the 10 best vehicles they could possibly acquire to fill the need that they have of 6 such vehicles. And Susan, for my benefit, if you would, read down the high-level profile of the first 5 for me, please.
We have a 2004 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, a 2008 Honda CR-V LX, 2005 Jeep Wrangler Sport, 2010 Ford Escape XLT, and a 2008 Toyota RAV4 Limited.
All right, now think about what just occurred there. The system with science looked at what the dealership said they wanted to stock, considered what they said they did not want to stock, and it produced a list of absolutely the very best vehicles for chance of success for this particular dealership in light of their strategic guidelines. And what you can see is, at least on these first 5 vehicles, is a grade range which goes from a high of a B+ for the first vehicle, which I believe was the 04 Wrangler Rubicon, down to the RAV4, which has a grade of what, Susan?
A B-.
A B-. So from a B+ to a B-. Now, one might ask the question, why are there no A's? And the answer is that for compact SUVs in this dealership's market today, there are simply no vehicles in the 14.9 to 19.9 category that roll up to an A given the individual grades of those 7 characteristics. The very best one is this 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon with an overall grade of a B+. But it's also important to note, as I've told many provision users, that I've come to understand where the real value of the provision grading system lies is not at its high-level grade, in this case a B+, but rather a careful and thoughtful analysis of the 7 discrete subgrades. So let's take a moment on this B+ 04 Wrangler Rubicon, and let's look at the individual grades of the 7 characteristics for this vehicle. Susan, let's start with the first one being demand. I believe it gets an A+. Is that correct? And why?
It gets an A+ because it's in the 98.16 percentile.
So what that means is that of all of the compact SUVs in this particular dealership's market as of this morning, in the 14.9 to 19.9 price range, this vehicle is in the 99th percentile in terms of shoppers on autotrader.com requesting searches for such vehicles, for compact vehicles in that price range. So it's a vehicle of extraordinarily high interest from shoppers in this dealer's market at this current moment. The second attribute, Susan, got what grade and why?
Interest received an A, and the VDP, SRP to VDP conversion rate of 4.84%.
Now that's pretty extraordinary conversion rate. For those of you who have a sensitivity and awareness of average conversion rates from SRPs to VDPs for most vehicles on classified advertising sites, the average tends to be, perhaps 2.5%. So this one is very close to double, if not double, more than double the average conversion. So what we can really be certain of is that this particular version, this 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, is one that really is the one that customers seem to be zeroing in on. Next attribute, please.
Volume receives an A. It sold 15. It sold 15 in the past 45 days.
Now, 15 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicons in the dealerships market have been retailed in the past 45 days, which puts it in the 90+ percentile. Next attribute, please.
Day supply received an A+. It has a 21-day supply.
Wow. And you can now begin to understand how this dealership has been so successful in assembling a whole inventory of vehicles with such low market day supply. They're actually zeroing in on cars that have wonderfully low market day supply. Next attribute, profitability, please.
Profitability receives a C. Average auction price is $12,233 compared to the average list price of $17,272.
So this is the characteristic of this vehicle that presents least best. Not bad, but least best with a C. I believe that's about a $4,300 spread. So okay, next attribute, availability.
Availability receives a C. There are currently 6 available at auction.
Okay. Not as wonderfully plentiful as we'd like it to be, but there are in fact 6 out there. And then the final attribute of this dealership's recent past experience?
A B+. They sold 1 of this make and model. On average, it's sat on their lot for 3 days. The last vehicle was sold on May 16th.
Now think about that. When you consider each of these 7 attributes, have we ever, as decision makers, been able to tease out of the market knowledge such as this? Would we all naturally agree that each one of these 7 attributes is a key indicator of future success of a vehicle? And based on the dealership's strategic criteria of minimum grades, we can see that this one well exceeds the minimum grade on most every attribute with the possible exception of 2. So the likelihood of success of this vehicle on this particular dealership's lot is extraordinarily high. Now, take a step back once again and think about it. This is a Honda dealership. And would you imagine that a typical used car buyer at a Honda dealership would even be aware that as of this morning they need 6 vehicles to balance to their strategic objective, assuming they had a strategic objective, for compact sport utility vehicles in the $14,900 to $19,900 price range? It's unlikely they would even know they needed 6. Let alone have the intuition or the knowledge of the marketplace to say that the single best vehicle in the entire universe of this dealer's market to fill that first slot would be an 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. It's just not an intuitive vehicle. But as I have previously stated, what I've come to understand is where most of the value of the grade system is not in its overall grade, in this case a B+, but really a fine, detailed level understanding of its individual strengths and weaknesses based on the grade of each of the 7 characteristics. And let me show you what I mean by that. Back to our strategy page, you might recall that we needed 6 vehicles in the $14,900 to $19,900 price range, but we also needed 7 vehicles in the $19,900 to $25,000 price range in compact sport utilities. So if we go to the recommendation page and we say, show us the list of the top 10 best compact sport utilities in the $19,900 to $25,000 range, there's another Jeep Wrangler Rubicon on this page. I believe it's an 06. Is that correct, Susan?
Yes, it is.
And this particular vehicle gets an overall grade of a B?
Correct.
Now, if you recall, the 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon got a B+. This one gets a B. So at the top grade level, one might assume that although this vehicle is also a strong contender in the $19,900 to $25,000 compact sport utility range, one might conclude that it's not quite as good of a contender as is the 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, based on the fact that the latter got a B+ and this one only has a B. But if we drill down to the individual grade level, we see a different profile, a different characteristic, or potentially different performance profile. While it is not as good as the 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon is in some respects, like demand and interest, it's still very good. But take a look at what really stands out about the 06 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon in this dealer's market as of this morning. What really stands out and caught my attention is its profitability. Is it an A or an A plus for profitability, Susan?
It's actually a B plus.
I'm sorry, B plus, okay.
Yeah, but the spread is $7,500.
$7,500 spread. Now, once again, I ask you, would any, even the best used car buyer at a Honda lot, know that he or she should be looking for a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon? Would that buyer have the specific knowledge to understand that although the 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon is a very strong performer, if he or she were really focused on the objective of maximizing the profit opportunity of the best vehicle in the market, the 06 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon for profit would be a far superior performer to the 04. The 04 only having a $4,300 spread, where this one having a spread in excess of $7,000. And I think what this example points out to us is just how smart today a dealership can be in terms of knowing what vehicles not to put on that lot, knowing what vehicles to put on that lot, and specifically knowing what vehicles to put on that lot to achieve specific objectives. If the specific objectives of this dealership as of this moment was to really maximize their front-end gross profit, the 06 Wrangler Rubicon would be the clear choice over the 04 or other vehicles perhaps. But conversely, if the objective of the dealership was to produce the highest possible volume, we would be much more attuned to the characteristics perhaps of demand and interest, in which case it would suggest that the 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon would be the better choice for that objective. But fortunately, the reality for both of these vehicles is that they are strong across the board in all attributes. But this example of juxtaposing the 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon versus the 06 Rubicon really demonstrates how specific the provisioning system can be in terms of excluding, eliminating, or including very specific recommendations for the dealership's specific strategic objectives. And you know, this is the type of knowledge or information that, when used properly, can fundamentally change the outcome of a dealership. As I have already outlined to you, this dealership is turning their inventory 15.5 times. It's got an overall market day supply of inventory in the low 50-day range. I mean, these are the underlying characteristics that make inventory move fast and gross well. But let's go back now to this 06 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon and ask ourselves a couple of additional, very practical questions. And the first one being, okay, having zeroed in and identified the 06 Rubicon as one that I really want, perhaps, what should I pay for the vehicle? Well, once again, the provisioning system brings true science to this decision. And as many of you know, the provisioning system provides what we call bid guidance. It gives bid guidance as to what the dealership should feel comfortable paying for such a vehicle based on a version with low, medium, or high odometer mileage. And Susan, the bid guidance that the provision system gives this dealership as of today for this vehicle with average miles would be what?
$19,703.
$19,703. Now, why does it give us the bid guidance of $19,703? How does it come up with that number? Well, not only today does the provision system know what price the vehicle can be priced at to expect the optimum amount of traffic, but it also considers where the dealership does want to price their vehicles on average for the first age bucket. And in this case, what is that number, Susan?
That number is $21,803 or 98% of market.
All right, so at 21.8, this dealership has a target of pricing such vehicles for the first 25 days at 98% of market. So 21.8 is that number, and from that number, we deduct the dealership's minimum front-end profit objective, and I stress minimum. They can certainly price more in, but their minimum front-end objective is, I believe, $1,000. Then it deducts this particular dealership's average reconditioning expense for a vehicle of this age and odometer, and I believe in this case it puts in $1,100 for that. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then is there a deduct here for a PAC or other fees or expenses?
No.
Okay, and that derives, starting with the suggested retail price, that derives the price at which we can feel justified paying $19,700. Because you see, if we do pay $19,700, we can price the car on day one right in line with our strategic objective of 98% of market. We can meet or exceed a $1,000 minimum profit, and we can cover our $1,100 estimated reconditioning costs. So I ask you, have we ever been able to know better in the past about what is a rational price to pay for a vehicle? And I really believe that we haven't. And it's also important to note that that doesn't mean that you couldn't or shouldn't ever be prepared to pay over that amount for this vehicle if you had to. But if you do decide to do so, you're doing it with your eyes wide open. You're doing it fully aware of the fact that to the extent that you pay over $19,700 for this vehicle, you are either going to have to sacrifice your competitive position in the market or perhaps a bit of your $1,000 profit. So are there circumstances that justify doing so? Certainly. But if it's the right vehicle, and this one certainly is the right vehicle, and you're doing it fully aware of the consequences of your market position or your profit, then it's a prudent thing to do so. So the provisioning system now has not only considered our strategic objectives and made absolutely the best recommendation of the first of the 6 or 7 vehicles that we buy to fill this need, it has also given us the most rational information ever in terms of what we should be prepared to pay for the vehicle. But as we're all aware in today's market, it's one thing to know the vehicle and to know what to pay for the vehicle, and it's quite another to be able to find the vehicle. Again, the provision system brings true science to this, eliminates a lot of the effort and a lot of the inevitable frustration of a used car buyer having to go to 1 or 2 auctions or even 1 or 2 auction platforms to try and find the car. The system today has the ability to scan all of the auctions in all of the wholesale marketplace and identify every one that is currently available. So Susan, if we were to go out to, with the imperative to buy this 06 Wrangler Rubicon, armed with the knowledge of what we should pay, where are the auctions where it's currently available within the reasonable proximity of this dealership?
That would be, let's click on here. We have Smart Auction, we have Mannheim, Seattle, Mannheim, Fredericksburg, Mannheim, Philadelphia, and Mannheim, Ohio. And that one is actually running today.
Oh, is that right? The Mannheim, Ohio?
Yes.
So this vehicle is running there today. I'm curious, does it have a condition report?
Yes, it does.
And what is the condition? What is the grade?
3.7.
3.7 out of what I believe is a 5-point scale. So if we were to bid on this car, can you tell me what the imperfections of this vehicle are that caused it to be rated as a 3.75 out of a scale of possible 5?
Yes, there appears to be some light to heavy scratches on the quarter panel, fender, hood, right front door, left front fender.
Anything other than cosmetic scratches that need to be addressed?
Nope, that shows all the damage.
Okay, and does it show us a bid reserve on that vehicle?
On that particular vehicle, it shows a reserve of $19,266.
19,266, and is it not the case that we derived or determined through our bid guidance that we could pay up to 19,700 for that vehicle and feel comfortable to meet our pricing and our profit objectives?
That's correct.
So that would allow us roughly about $500 to address the cosmetic issues that this vehicle seems to have.
Correct.
I'm curious, Susan, can you tell me what the average MMR of these Jeep Wrangler Rubicons is currently?
Right now, the MMR is showing, give me 1 second here. It is showing a $16,400 price.
Okay, and what average miles is that, or what miles are those?
Those miles is actually 94,000, which would be considered the higher end of the mileage rather than the mid-range.
So what would our bid? What would that? Good observation. What would our bid guidance be for a high mileage version of this vehicle, where we could pay 19,200 for a moderate version, and this one I believe had 53,000, but the high mileage vehicle we could justify paying how much?
$17,278.
Still above the average MMR price.
Correct.
So you see what we have identified here is what is undoubtedly the most desirable vehicle this dealership could possibly purchase to fill that need of 6 or 7 compact sport utilities. And we've identified a rational price to pay for the vehicle. We've identified the fact that the vehicle is available. And we've identified the fact that it could likely be purchased based on recent sales of similar vehicles. So, you know, once again, what we've done here is we have disproven the common notion among many buyers today that they can't find the right vehicles, even assuming they knew what the right vehicles were. They can't find them, and they can't buy them for the right amount of money. In fact, they can be found, they can be identified, they can be found, and in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, they also can be purchased for the right amount of money. But what we also know from this demonstration is that it takes a very different approach to what was previously known as stocking, which now I'd like to call provisioning. It takes a strategic approach. It takes tools and technology that bring the science of information to these decision-making processes. But when applied, you can get an extraordinarily different outcome on a used vehicle lot as this particular store is experiencing today. And again, Susan, I'd like to go back to their vehicle summary page slide. And, okay, you know, with this experience now, you know, take a look at this vehicle summary page. And for those of you who are Velocity managed dealerships under the vAuto system, I mean, compare this vehicle summary page to the one that might exist at your dealership and ask yourself how much better the outcome of the used vehicle department's performance might be if, in fact, it possessed these characteristics. The characteristics of the luxury of being able to price your vehicles for the first 25 plus days at or above market and still expect to see prospects. Why? Because you have vehicles of extraordinarily high demand and low supply, and you've owned them, you've been able to purchase them, recondition and put them on the front line for a cost to market that allows you to make plenty of profit selling those vehicles at current market prices. And you can also see the very natural characteristics of fast turn, evidenced by the fact that 64% of the vehicles on the lot today are under 25 days of age. And again, remembering that the overall performance outcome is 15.5 turns per year of used vehicle inventory. Truly an extraordinary outcome, truly achieved by using the provisioning science to its fullest extent. So this demonstration should show us all that there is a better way of doing it. It's practical, it's real, and it's here today. So what I'd like to do at this point is to open it up to the audience for question and answer, and I would be happy to answer any other questions that any of you might have pertaining to velocity management. So if you haven't done so already, as Susan mentioned at the beginning of the session, there's a box on your screen where you can enter questions, and I'll take as many as I can in the allotted time that we have today. Susan, do we have questions?
We do have a few. And the first one I'm going to put into context for you. He asked the question when we were originally looking at the vehicle summary page. And so the question at that point was, so what you're saying is the grade is not that important on the vehicle summary page.
Yeah, good question, good observation. You know, when we introduced the provisioning system, I made the decision to also grade every vehicle that is currently in the dealer's inventory unit by unit, and then also to roll up those grades into the respective age buckets that display on the vehicle summary page. And one of the first surprises that we all got when we implemented the grading system on the vehicle summary page is the revelation that for most dealers, the grade in most every bucket was some form of a C, a C minus, a C plus, with very few exceptions. That was the average grade. And at first, that was somewhat distressing and somewhat puzzling to me. But what I came to understand is that, in fact, most vehicles in the marketplace are average cars. They all certainly have individual characteristics of strengths and weaknesses, but on average, most vehicles in the marketplace are average cars, which incidentally is not too different than the human population. While most of us have our own individual strengths and weaknesses, most of us on balance are average. So that was my very first indication that the overall grade just might not be as important as I initially thought it might be. And what I really did discover is a couple important things. Number one is that where the action really lies is understanding the individual strengths and weaknesses, the 7 subgrades. And second level of understanding that I have ultimately achieved is that if a dealership works at it really hard, they really can use the overall grade to eliminate the losers. You know, consciously avoid the C's, the D's, the C minuses, and focus on acquiring the vehicles that have the higher grades. So they can certainly avoid a lot of mistakes, and with a lot of effort over time, they can improve the overall grade in each bucket. So what Susan and I have begun to notice as we look at vAuto and Velocity dealers' inventory now is we're starting to see greater incidence of dealerships that have Bs in various different buckets. We didn't see that at first. When the provision system was new and dealers weren't using it or weren't using it to its full capacity, we didn't see that. But now as dealers are getting more proficient with the system, we're beginning to see more and more age buckets with Bs and higher. But another factor that has to be kept in mind is that the percentage of vehicles that a dealership buys is usually, and I guess it depends somewhat on the franchise, but it's usually not the majority of the vehicles that they have in inventory. For most dealerships, certainly this is the case with a Honda dealership, the majority of vehicles tends to be vehicles that they trade for. And of course, you don't have the opportunity to choose your grade or put in a minimum grade standard. You have to take what you get. But the important thing is that you understand what you're getting, and you can more appropriately make decisions about how far to stretch for those vehicles, how aggressive to be, well, to keep them or not to keep them, and then if you do decide to keep them, how aggressive you should be on pricing. So this particular dealership on that vehicle summary page, to answer your question directly, I think had one category with a B and the others with C pluses. And that evidence, or that's a result of taking in a lot of trades where they don't control it, but that also shows you that the vehicles they are buying, as you can see, are ones that are being bought most intelligently. Next question.
Okay, and I apologize, Kamlesh, if I'm destroying your name. He has 3 questions all revolving around demand. The first one is, how is demand calculated? The second is it just search data or also sales of the vehicle? And the third is, does demand also include sales of the vehicle previously other than past 45 days?
Okay. Well, let me start out with past actual retail sales is a discrete characteristic, one of the 7, called volume. We can actually see how many vehicles of that year, make, model, and trim level were sold in the dealer's market in the past 45 days, sold retail. We can see that by their coming and goings off of the internet. The demand is solely driven by the searches that consumers are requesting on autotrader.com in the dealer's market. Now, to be sure, autotrader.com is not the only site upon which shoppers are searching or conducting searches. But what we all can feel comfortable about is that they are large enough that in every dealer's market, the activity level is high enough that it represents it has statistical meaning. So if, as is in the case of the 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon in this dealer's market, of all of the compact SUVs being searched for, the 04 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon scored in the 99th percentile. So, there are certainly searches done elsewhere, but, statistically that's very meaningful in terms of indicating to us that it's a vehicle that is in very hot demand. Next question, please.
Okay, the next question, we had 2 similar questions. When will, let's see, will you post the video for review, and then is there a downloadable MP3 version of the webinar?
Sure. Susan, you might answer that question on my behalf, please.
Yeah, so there will not be a downloadable MP3 file. However, in the next day or 2, we will get the file, the webinar, up on our blog, our vAuto webpage, and I'm going to tell you that it's at vAuto.com. And I'm going to switch screens here real quick. I apologize, just so you can see where it's at. If you go to our vAuto.com webpage and you look under News and Resources, under Webinars, this is the page that will come up, and it will be dated for today's date, June 19th, and it will be sitting in here. You can just click on it and you'll be able to view it. And again, we'll have that up in the next day or 2.
Thank you. I also want to point out that the advanced Workbench function that I demonstrated, where this dealership specified minimum grades of C's or C pluses in each of the 7 attributes, is a feature that is by default not turned on for every provision dealer. It simply can be turned on with flip of a switch on our side. Simply make that request of your performance manager. And the reason that I did not default it on for every provision dealer is that I felt that the learning curve for most provision dealers was such that it would have added more complexity and consequently would potentially impede the usage, the adoption, the learning curve. So it's there. It can be turned on. Simply ask your performance manager to do it, and it's really quite powerful, as you see. Susan?
Next question comes from our neighbors up in the north. When will provisioning be available in Canada?
Great question. Thank you. We just received the data feed from Trader Canada that we need for demand and interest, and we're working on it in our shop right now. And I don't want to give a absolute commitment because I'm not firm on this, or I'm not sure of myself, but I would say that it should be the second half of this year, which is perhaps in the next 3 months or so. But if I missed that, I apologize, but I shouldn't have missed it much. So it's coming very soon. Thank you.
And from John Hopt, he says, why can't we see the buy now price on OVE similar to Smart Auction and OpenLane? It would be great to see the MMR on the auction vehicles also.
Yeah, I can't see any reason why you don't see that, so thank you for that question. Let me take that, and unless there's something that I don't know, we should have it there. Thank you, John. That's an excellent suggestion.
Next question comes from Joel Osserman. Does your search include independentauction.com and the smaller chains like Acadia? Do your recommendations list which auction had a particular vehicle to cut down search time?
Yes. Let me tell you that we're adding more and more auctions all the time. If you do business with a particular auction that you don't see in the provision system, let us know, and please let the auction know that you would like their inventory to be included in the vAuto provisioning system. Most of them, if not all of them, are particularly anxious to have their inventory displayed as many places as possible. So please make that request of both them and us, and we'll get it in there. And was there a second part to that question that I missed?
Do your recommendations list which auction had a particular vehicle to cut down search time?
We have tools and functionality coming here very shortly that will dramatically improve your efficiency on auction searches. So stay tuned.
Next up from Doug Harms, I am experiencing, not all the time but frequently, a large difference between suggested purchase price and starting bids. Seems more prevalent with OVE and Smart Auction.
Yeah, that's right. There is a definite gap between what many dealers are, setting as minimum reserves and what you should be paying for the vehicles. And I guess my hope is that as the marketplace becomes smarter through tools like this and other tools of our competitors, which are also, very fine systems, I hope that, dealers, buyers and sellers get closer in terms of their numbers, because they're both becoming more realistic over time in light of greater transparency in the marketplace. So, I think that that's just a condition that has to work itself out. And I would also venture to say, although I don't have empirical or objective knowledge to support it, but I think the frequency of those gaps and the degree of those gaps between what you should pay for a vehicle and what their minimum reserves are, I think is being reduced over time.
Okay, our next question comes again from Kamlesh. He says, what does SRP and VDP stand for?
If you're an automobile dealer and you don't know what SRP and VDP is, I would strongly recommend that you get a hold of your rep at cars.com or at Auto Trader. These are two very important key performance indicators for new and used car operations. Search result page is what SRP is. VDP is vehicle detail page view. So very quickly, if you're a shopper on a site like Auto Trader or Cars.com and you request a search for a particular vehicle, let's say a Chevy Cobalt, you might get 4 or 5 pages of Chevy Cobalts returned to you on that search. On Cars.com, each page contains 50 vehicles. On Auto Trader, each page contains 25 vehicles. If your car's on page 3 out of 5, and that shopper only looks at page 1 or 2, you don't get credit for what's called an SRP, search result page. You don't get credit for an SRP until and unless they get to page 3, that page that contains your vehicle, as either one of 25 or 50. If they happen to get to page 3 containing your vehicle, and they identify your specific vehicle from the other 49 or 24 on the page as one that so closely is aligned with their needs, wants, and desires that they click on your vehicle, fill the entire browser screen up with photos and descriptions of your vehicle to the exclusion of all the other vehicles on that page or on that site, that's called the vehicle detail page view. That's the money metric, because the more times that somebody says goodbye for a few moments to all the other cars on that site to possibly consider, imagine owning your vehicle, the more times that happens, the more times they're likely to pick up the phone, call your dealership, or get in their car and visit your dealership. And those are obviously the precursors to a sale. Next question, please.
Okay, next question is from Dan Peterson. The 2006 Jeep Rubicon that was running today in Ohio had a good CR, but it was a soft top and poor color. Do you still buy this Jeep? Does the value change?
Yeah, you know, those are certainly factors to be considered that the provision system isn't taking into consideration. So I think that your question really, brings up a good point, and that is that as awesome as the science of the provisioning system is, there's still a need to look at paint and metal and glass and rubber, and think about the vehicles at that level. So, excellent question, because it really does display the fact that there still is plenty of room and opportunity for good instinct and judgment and experience.
Okay, from Steve Mabry, he says, in several of my recommended buckets, there is no vehicles to choose from in my market.
Yeah. Steve, that could be a function of a couple different things, the way that you've got the system set up. So I would like to have you address that with your performance manager or with me directly, because and I'm not suggesting that you're an inexperienced user, because I know that you're not, but let me put it this way. Experienced users often have had that result, and we can show them why that happens. So it's a technical question in some cases, so let me defer that to bring to either me directly or your performance manager. But good question, Steve.
Next question comes from Don Pendleton. Any velocity books in the works to follow 2.0?
Yeah, I got to tell you guys, I'm so excited. I am almost complete with the third velocity book. I fully expect to have it ready this fall, and I'm really excited because I wasn't prepared to write the second or this third book until and unless I really felt that I had sufficient new additional knowledge or understanding or learnings that would make the next book valuable beyond the previous book. And I believe that I've done that, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited about this book, and I believe that I believe that you guys will really find value in it. And I'm not in the business of making money from writing books. All the sales proceeds will go to charity. But I'm really jazzed to bring this one to the market. So thank you for that question.
Keith Cahy asks, why do they price the aged over 61 days at 99% to market? Is this to set them up?
Yeah, Keith, you know the answer to it. Yeah, first of all, they only have 9 vehicles in that bucket, I believe. Is that correct, Susan?
Yes, that was correct.
And you know the reason they do it, the reason that you all do it, and that is that when those vehicles get really old, you get really wrong in them, and you guys tend not to want to face the music. So, listen, I'm glad you spotted that. I didn't highlight it because I wasn't particularly pleased or proud of it, but in the context of the absolute stellar otherwise performance of this dealership, I'll take it. But it's very common that owned vehicles are the most egregiously priced, and we all know why that is. We don't want to face the music.
Okay, from Ricky Walter, would it be advantageous to send trade-ins that aren't in the desired category straight to wholesale?
I would say that the answer is, in most cases, yes, and I know that's a hard thing to do. Because, typically the filter or the criteria to keep a car is whether it's a retail piece, a quote-unquote retail piece. And while it might be a retail piece, it doesn't necessarily mean that that particular piece has the likelihood of achieving the best possible ROI relative to another possible vehicle that could be purchased. So I think that yes, I think that you have to have the maturity of your understanding of how to make money and or how to put capital to work to say that there are some good cars, but there might be better cars. And you have to have, the discipline to believe in the conviction of your decisions. But on the other hand, listen, it's still the car business. And we all know that sometimes that really rare car comes along that doesn't fit the profile, but you just know it's going to be the winner. But the problem is that if you, aren't really disciplined about, separating those categories, and really make the latter the exception rather than the rule, I think you're just back to the old way of doing it, and that is to say that we just sell retail pieces. And that might have been okay up to this point, but if you really want to take it to the next level in a very discriminating market, it's going to require a little different discipline.
Okay, Bob Morris says thank you, as well as Steve Mabry.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your attendance.
From Matt Smith, in your experience with velocity dealers, are stores starting to hire purchasers/inventory management help with limited retail automotive experience?
Well, clearly what's beginning to change, and I've been writing about this in my book, you'll see it really in this third book, is we're all on a road to reinvention. And if you think about it, the variable operations of most every dealership look almost all the same. They got a GM, they might have a GSM, they got a new car manager, used car manager, assistant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they all pretty much are the same. And that's because, that was the organizational structure that in the past optimized the new and used car markets as we knew them. But today, the realities of both the new and the used car market are very different than they were in the past. And consequently, the old organization structure, roles and responsibilities don't work today as well as they used to. So for sure, what we're beginning to see now across the board in variable operations are new positions, different roles and different responsibilities. And to fit those different positions, roles, and responsibilities are people who possess different skills. And are some of those skills ones that are not retail, steeped in retail experience? To be sure they are. Because some of these skills today are more about using computers and analyzing data than they are about, assessing, metal and paint. Not to say that there's not a role for assessing metal, paint, rubber, and glass, but some skills in this new dealership environment don't really require that. They require people who have had, maybe Excel or Access database training. So yes, the roles and responsibilities are changing, and in some circumstances, they're gravitating towards people who have limited or perhaps even no automotive experience.
Okay, from Kamlesh, he has a couple more questions here. He says, does 99 percentile mean this vehicle is amongst the top 1% of the vehicles searched in dealers' region?
Yes, in that particular class of vehicles, in this example, compact SUVs, that's exactly what it means.
Okay, and the second part of that is there a possibility for a dealer to look at the country's top 1% vehicle in demand?
Yes. The workbench, the advanced workbench would allow you, conceivably, potentially, to put an A+ in the demand field, and then you could put any, you could put all F's and everything else, which would essentially say, look, show me a list of vehicles in my market, or for that matter, the entire country, that are the A+ in demand, and I don't give a hoot what the other characteristics are. They could all be F's, and it would do that. And I got to tell you something, manipulating that inventory workbench in that way is a really interesting experience. I mean, you really learn. You can slice and dice the vehicles in a marketplace if you wanted to see the ones that have the highest profitability. Arguably the ones that would be the best secondary finance vehicles. You could do that. It's incredible what you can do with that tool. It's like genetically engineering, a buy list or a recommendation list. It's quite extraordinary experience if you haven't done it to do so.
Okay, so what I did was, while you were talking, I pulled up the advanced workbench and just set the demand to A+. Every other grade shows an F. So you can see along the line here the different vehicles that have an A+ for demand.
I'm curious, what comes up in the first 3 slots?
Actually, well, oddly, there's 1,100 vehicles, and this is in the Chicago area. So in the first 3 slots, the 2011 Ford F-150 XL,
Yeah.
2009 BMW 5 Series 528i.
Yeah.
And the 2010 Toyota Sienna LE.
I guess there's not a whole lot of surprise there, but that shows you how you can do this. I mean, it's just, it's like just something we've never been able to do before. You know, our ability to understand the market, understand the particular strengths and weaknesses of given vehicles, align those strengths and weaknesses with what our strategic objectives are at our dealership at any given moment, and actually find those cars and pay the right money. I mean, this is a new day. This is absolutely a new day. This is the age of provisioning.
Okay, we do have a handful of questions, but just to let everyone know, it is 1:10 p.m. Central Time, but we'll keep going until we get through all these questions here for you. Also from Kamlesh, secondly, is vAuto planning to come to Germany?
We have investigated several international markets, Germany's being one of them, and it is on our strategic roadmap. I just can't at this time, you know, tell you definitively timing.
Okay, from John Killian, I am looking at our recommendations, and our top recommended vehicle to provision is a 2009 Nissan Sentra with a total or overall grade of A+. I am confused how that is arrived at, since the 7 subgrades are A+, F, A+, C+, C-, and F.
Well, I don't know specifically on this particular car, but the answer generally to that question is that each one of the 7 attributes has its own weighting. They're not all weighted the same. So if you sort of think about the overall grade being like what you'd get at the end of a semester in school, school is comprised of some tests, some quizzes, perhaps a midterm and a final. Each has its own unique weighting. Now, the system comes with a default weighting system that we spent the better part of a year testing and determining to be one that we feel is most appropriate. However, we do allow the dealership to modify the weightings if they have a different opinion in terms of the relative value of each of these 7 characteristics. And without knowing what your weighting system is, whether it's at the default or it's been modified, I can't specifically answer that question, but you certainly deserve an answer. And if you bring that to the attention of your performance manager or myself, we'll get you the absolute answer to it. But good question.
From Scott Shepard, along the lines of adding MMR and OVE price, why not add Carfax, no accidents, 1 owner, etc.?
We do have that, and perhaps I neglected or failed to demonstrate that, but we do have Carfax and auto check in the system for you.
Next question comes from Matt Smith. Why, when running Google Analytics for my website traffic, is Google #1 for driving traffic directly to my store site by a number 4 times greater than the next closest site? And AutoTrader and Cars.com are 7th and 8th on the list.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't claim to be an expert on this subject matter. So there's undoubtedly many smarter people to answer that sort of question than myself. It's a little bit outside my domain. The only thing that I can tell you from my experience with AutoTrader is that a whole lot of people visit sites like AutoTrader and Cars.com, find out who's got the car they want, and then sometimes subsequently thereafter they go to Google, like the Yellow Pages, to find the telephone number or the address of the dealership. And we know these things today objectively because there are companies like Demdex and others that you may or may not be aware of today that actually put cookies on people's browsers and can see the sites that they've been at and the sequence of those. So these things are objectively known today, but I apologize, I can't give you more definitive answer than that. But to a certain extent, Google is maybe the Yellow Pages of our generation.
Okay, from Jerry Heineke, I believe his name is pronounced. When I appraise
Jerry.
my bids,
Sure.
when I appraise my bids, when I appraise my bids are often as much as $1,000 below MMR. Any suggestion?
Well, Jerry, first of all, thank you, and say hello to the gang there for me. But listen, it can be a number of factors. I mean, I would have to know what you're setting as your minimum profit objective. I would have to know how realistic your reconditioning is. I'd have to know whether you have, your pack appropriately set. I mean, these are all factors that will derive the bid guidance. And then, of course, even if those things are all done, in a reasonable manner, you still have the reality, although it's moderating a bit lately, you still have the reality of a particularly hot used car marketplace. So, combination of factors there that can influence that. But, listen, here's the reality. It is that there are still deals out there on the right cars. But you have to look and analyze a lot more cars to find the deals. You got to be prepared to go further, and you got to be prepared to look at a lot more cars, to find those deals. But they are out there, and it certainly takes more effort and more work than it ever used to do or be.
Okay, from Kevin McDonald, if you were going to focus on two of the categories specifically for breaking down the most desirable vehicles, would experience and profitability be the two you would choose? If not, which two?
Well, for those of you who know me, you know well that I'm not a huge believer in past experience, as counterintuitive as that may seem, for a whole bunch of different reasons. Past experience is a bit of fairy dust, in my opinion. It sounds good, it sounds right, but when you really get down to, past experience of vehicles, there's so many things you don't know. Particular equipment level that changes the nature of the car. You don't capture lost sales requests. You don't have enough volume to have statistical validity. I mean, all sorts of problems with past experience. Intuitively, it sounds right. Practically, it's very flawed. But, if you want my general opinion, I mean, first of all, I think obviously all 7 of these attributes have meaning. If you look at the default weighting system in the provision system, you can begin to discern my belief based on a lot of analytics in terms of what their relative weights are or should be in terms of their importance. So I guess that probably answers the question better than anything else. But it also depends on what your objectives are at your dealership. If your objective is at the current moment to pump out a lot of volume, then I would put a heavy emphasis on demand and interest. If your objective is to really fix a particular problem like low front-end gross profit, I might, put more emphasis and weight on profitability. So it really, to some extent depends on the circumstances and the priorities and the strategic objectives of the dealership. But, all things else the same, look at the default weightings that we've placed on each of these 7 attributes, and that would be my best judgment on their relative importance.
From C.J. Romig, he says, Ed Brooks said that you'll be serving snacks. Is this true? Haha, good stuff today, thanks.
Thanks, C.J. Yeah, I got pizza here for you guys. Come on down.
Okay, from Scott Bean, do you suggest a max days in inventory for vehicles with 100-day supply or greater?
Yeah, get rid of them today. I mean, honestly, would you ever call up your new car factory rep and say, hey, send me some new cars, but make sure that they have 100 market day supply or more? You'd never do that in a million years. So I ask you, why in the world, with all of the better choices out there in the marketplace, when evidenced by the dealer that I showed you today, you could make a collection of inventory that has an average 54 market day supply, why would you sit around and be content representing a vehicle with 100-plus market day supply? I mean, there's got to be better choices. But this is a new way of thinking, and dealers often tend to be comfortable doing it the way they used to do. If it looks good, it must be okay, and it just isn't so anymore. So my recommendation is that I would avoid it like the plague. I would get out of it as quick as I could, wholesale or retail. If I decided to retail it, it would be gone fast.
From Keith Cahy, he says, thank you, Dale and Susan. Great webinar.
Thanks, Keith. Nice to hear from you.
Ricky Walter says, thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Cole, did you mention when the third book would be available?
Yeah, I can't tell you an exact date, but I'll tell you it will be this fall. And it's going to be a good one.
Okay, from Scott, his last name starts with a G. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Would you suggest dealers create content that is SEO optimized for their ideal vehicle in their market? Do you have any links or examples that are doing so?
Yeah, again, you know, SEO is not my domain, so I really don't feel too qualified giving you answers. But, you know, I can just tell you it sounds good to optimize everything that you can in today's internet environment. Although I have to tell you, and again, I mean, it shouldn't be lost on anybody that that I'm part of the Auto Trader company. So, you know, if anyone is cynical, I mean, you know, take it for what it is. But I wouldn't say anything that I don't believe. And my sense is that when it comes to used cars, classified advertising always has been and continues to be the most productive form of advertising. It fits what used car shoppers want. What used car shoppers want is selection, because any type of vehicle could be in any location, in any dealership at any moment, and used car shoppers generally want to start very broad and then narrow it. So I guess I'm a little bit concerned, and that's not to say that there's not other forms of used car advertising that are worthwhile or effective. There certainly are, but I guess I would say, and I've had past experience with dealers who love the whole SEO thing for used cars. I would say that you know, the first and foremost form of used car advertising to be effective and cost-worthy is classified, whether it be online or in print. It matches what shoppers want. But beyond that, there are certainly other forms, including SEO, and yeah, I would optimize everything I could in today's environment.
From Stephen Fries, I noticed that they have 20-plus vehicles in the unranked category. Is there a benefit or possible reason that they do that?
What does he mean there, Sue, by unranked?
Let me take a look and see. I'm going to have to go back.
Yeah, I'm not. Maybe you might want to provide me some additional clarification. But you know, vAuto system won't rank a car if there's not sufficient sample size. I'm not sure what exactly he means by that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Maybe
either.
Provide some clarification. Let's keep rolling, Sue.
Okay, let's see. From Kamla, she says, thanks, Dale. I really enjoyed reading your book, and it has shown me new direction to work in automotive market.
Well, thank you. You're welcome, and I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll keep all learning together.
From Diane Jones, how do you suppress vehicles you do not want to source?
It's under your settings system, and if you ask your performance management, he or she will show you. It's very easy, but you do it under settings.
So Lance had helped reply to the Google traffic question. He says about 40% of Google traffic comes from AutoTrader and Cars.com. That's from Dadium. Okay,
there you have it. Thanks, Lance. I appreciate that. So Lance is a gentleman who helps me write the books. He's really smart, much smarter on a lot of this stuff than I am. So thanks for that contribution, Lance.
From Josh Cole, we just get the basic workbench. How do we get the advanced workbench?
Just ask your performance manager to turn it on and to give you some, training on it. It's easy.
Let's see. From Stephen Mader, any way to know how much we missed a car at auction proxy bidding?
Yeah, great question. Not today, to my knowledge, but I've been working on getting Mannheim to produce that with you or for you. I mean, it would be hugely helpful for a buyer to know how much they missed the car by, because, if you get that sort of feedback, that allows you to, be smarter on the next one, maybe not bid at all. But Mannheim has told me that they get it, they understand it, and that they're going to do it, but I just can't speak on their behalf, nor do I know specific timing. But I would make that recommendation to every online auction, is to give bidders feedback on what happened if they missed the vehicle.
Okay, well, we just got a note from Jermaine Dublin that says, Mannheim now tells you in an email, and then also from Harry Haber, he says, with the sales price and your proxy bid.
Well, there you go, and thank you to the Mannheim folks, because you know what, we brought that collectively, we brought that to their attention. They got it, they understood it, and thank you, Jermaine, for informing us that it's actually out there. So I would say that if any of you are not getting that email from Mannheim, or if you don't know if you're getting the Mannheim, then you contact your Mannheim rep and ask about it. And if you can't get clarity on it, let me know and I'll run it down for you.
Okay, from Kevin McDonald, they could be vehicles they just bought in the unranked category.
Okay.
I know that's referring to the unranked. Yeah.
You guys
from
are smarter on this stuff than we are, but okay, I'll take it.
Okay, from Russell LaFave, he says, thanks, Dale.
Hey, Russell, say hello for me.
Okay, and then Stephen Fry says, under the ranking totals that are color-coded as under red, under yellow, under green, and then unranked. Okay,
yeah, I think that's because there's not enough sample size to give you a statistical red, yellow, green, or ranking percentage. You know, you know, numbers are funny things. If you don't have enough quantity in your sample size, you know, percentages or rankings have little relevance. So we're very sensitive to that, and everything that we represent statistically or through a color code has to meet a statistical validation test, which is, you know, across the board.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Well, again, listen, thank you to everybody. Exciting times. And if there's anything that I can do for anyone, irrespective of whether or not you're a Velocity or vAuto dealer, it's my passion to do so. My telephone number and email should be up on the screen, and nothing gives me more pleasure than to hear from you and allow me to help you. And there's absolutely no obligation to buy or anything or pay me anything. It's just what I love to do. So thanks to all of you, and hope to have an opportunity to spend more time with you personally and on webcast in the future. Have a great day.